Sorry, I was trying to. That's all. Sorry, take seats.
You ready, sir?
I don't need to.
And then we're just gonna, you guys all get stands.
Show support.
Yes, sir. All right. All right, we're ready to start, everybody. Thank you for coming out for today's. Thank you for coming out for today's candidate forums. Good afternoon and welcome to this forum. My name is Greg Cooper with Texas Transparency Project, and I'm honored to facilitate this important discussion among candidates vying for the positions on Godley City Council and Godley School Board. This forum provides an opportunity for the community to hear directly from the candidates about their visions, policies, and plans for addressing the challenges and opportunities facing the greater Godley community. We would like to thank Chisholm's Restaurant. There will be appetizers and drinks provided. So thank you for that. And we really want to thank them for allowing this to happen here and for trusting us to do it in a respectful So we're going to start with City Council candidates. All candidates have been invited for City Council and for School Board. And this is going to be a question and answer type forum. The intent is to allow the candidates to introduce themselves and outline their vision for the City of Godley. This is not a debate, and it's not designed to facilitate back and forth. The audience outbursts will not be tolerated. We want to foster an environment that's welcoming and inviting for all candidates and elected officials. We're planning on doing another one of these, and we don't want it to be antagonistic. These individuals have chosen to selflessly volunteer their time to serve their community, and we need to respect that. So we're going to begin with an opportunity for each candidate to introduce themselves. We're going to humbly request that the candidates offer a brief biography. We want you to tell us about yourselves, tell us your basic platform, and why your desire to serve City Council. We're going to talk 4 topics on the City Council. It's financial responsibility and transparency, communication and community involvement, managing growth and property taxes, and managing roads and infrastructure. We did give the candidates information on what the topics would be. We're not looking to play gotcha here. We're looking for well thought out, informed decisions, because that's how we expect our elected officials to make decisions. We want them to research. We want them to dwell on it. We want them to understand the complexity of the topics before they make decisions. So we're now going to proceed with these 4 key topics. We're going to do 2 moderator questions on each topic, and then we will open up the audience to ask up to 2 questions on each of those topics, and then we will move on to the next topic. So candidates, do you guys have any questions before we start? Yes, sir. All right, does any of the audience have any questions before we start? All right, let's get started. I'm sorry. We do have some elected officials here. We have Kayla Lane from Godley ISD School Board, and we have Roger Corneliuson from the City of Godley, and we have Mayor Linker from the City of Godley. Is there any? And Nova Olson's a precinct chair. She's running. Any other elected officials that I've missed? And we're blessed to have Godley Police Department here also. So thank you. I apologize to the elected officials for not highlighting your guys' service earlier. I apologize. Roger Corneliuson is a current city council member. He's running unopposed. We're going to allow him to make some remarks before we get into the Q&A. Roger?
Okay. Thank you. Like I said, I'm running unopposed. Thank you to Greg and Dee for hosting this. I appreciate it. Basically, I've been on city council for 4 years, and in that 4 years, we've had some rough times. We've worked through them. the help of all the city members and with the new administration, we've done a lot of work, new police chief. We've got a lot of good work going on in the city. That's a plus, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to stay on another term. Also, I'm sorry, all over here. I'm gonna get straight and look at you. I do not like talking in public. I'm sorry. Hold it up closer. There we go. That's too loud. I just yell at people at work. I don't talk to them this way. I just let them get off, come here. So it's a whole lot of difference in what I do. But communication, we have a little bit of a problem in communication. Sometimes the city tries to get information out to our constituents, and we don't get out there to them. I'd like to, on our next budget, propose putting a marquee sign out front of the fire station on 917, one of the most traveled roads we have in our town. And that way, city council, school board meetings, anything we can put out there. I think that'd be a big plus for the citizens to know what's going on. A second thing I hear a lot about when people come up, either to the meetings or they are watching us online, we have displays by different people come out. I'd like to put a monitor behind us. That way everyone that comes, takes time to watch us, they see what's happening they see what we see. Ours is right there for us, but if you're in the audience, it's hard to see what's going on as far as the display. So I'd like to put a monitor behind us to help us on that, give us a little bit more communication. We have two serious problems in town. Number one is the sewer system. That's one of the reasons I am against a lot of controlled growth to the willy-nilly growth we've had in the past. I'm against apartments. I want our lot sizes to stay at 7,500 square feet. I want single-family residents to stay single-family residents. We have a lot of developers that come in, they want variances every time they turn around. A variance should be used very selectively. I have a creek, I have a easement. I need to make this property, this one or two lots a little bigger. Not make 40 lots smaller so he can put 40 houses in instead of 35. Again, stuff of that nature. But I'll let Greg go back on and go from there. Thank you.
And we have Gabrielle Mize came for another current sitting city council member. So thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. So now we're going to go into the candidate introductions. We, again, would like to have your biography, a brief history of yourself, your platform, and why you're choosing to run as an elected official. Ms. Self, you can begin. Or, do you have I want to use the mic.
Hi everyone, I am Deidre Self and I am running for Godley City Council Place 3. I moved to Godley almost a year ago and I chose Godley because this is a great family community and I wanted to bring my family closer together. All of my family has now moved here. So with that being said, I know Godley has a past. We can't dwell on the past, we have to move forward. And in order to move forward, we have to come together as a community. I was born and raised in El Paso, Texas. I moved here about 16 years ago. Sorry, I'm not good at helping. That's okay. I'm really not. I moved here about 16 years ago. My professional background is in sports and entertainment and also commercial project management. My ultimate goal is to keep Godley on the path that it's on and just straight forward. So thank you.
Hey. My apologies. Hey everybody, my name is Mike Matos. I am running for City Council Place number 1. Couple things here about me. Grew up here in North Texas, graduated here. I am a Red Raider, so every now and then if you hear Rackham, please yell to me, I'll yell it back. I am one of those. Just to make sure, couple things about me is similar to myself here, again, happy farms as well. So if you guys see me, I live right across the park. Something about me is anytime I see some of the dads and the kids playing basketball, I always tell the kids, hey, do a hook shot. The dads light up like, yes, I can do a hook shot. And the kids don't know what it is. So if you're ever by the park, you'll see me yell that. Just, that's me. A couple things about me is again, I've been involved in local politics as far as from Tarrant County. Been at the Tarrant County Historical Committee for a while. Kind of my passion is to be local government. A couple things about me, what drew me to kind of running for office here. A couple things is public safety. I think, as we know, Godley is going to continue to grow. A big emphasis on police and fire. We need to maintain that they are well funded. So again, the other thing too that I looked at here, notes would be also, I think, we need to be more proactive in our infrastructure growth, right? I think right now we're very reactive, and we need to be a lot more proactive. So again, looking at a 5-year, 10-year plan is something that I really want to be able to look at. And the last thing here is going to be fiscal responsibility. I think this is going on all across the nation. Again, making sure we review our budgets very thoroughly, making sure we understand that we don't have any excess waste, and make sure that we look at our budgets, so, line by line, very meticulously, to make sure that we have Godley set up for success in the future.
My name is Don Corley. I'm a retired United States Air Force guy. Grew up down in South Texas. I lived in Fort Worth after I retired from the Air Force. I moved to Godley about 4 years ago. And I live in this town. I ran for the school board 1 year. And the town is just, it's a beautiful little town. I'm going to run for place 1. Matos and I are going to have our discussion. And we'll decide, we'll find out who wins. But Godley is the kind of town that you don't want to change, but is going to change. Godley is a town that is facing that change as best they can. The current leadership that we have in Godley has done an excellent job as preparing for this upcoming change. And I think our biggest effort right now should be, what are we going to be in the future? What direction are we going to go? What road are we going to take? And my focus, I suppose, will be on the taxpayer. The government has switched back in the 60s and 70s. It went top to curve. The taxpayer should be on top of the pyramid. So the government's below the taxpayer. And so we need to do everything we can to inform the taxpayer of what's going on. Not, if you want to know, then you come see me. We need to go see them. And that will be my focus when I get on the city council.
So for the Q&A part, we're going to start with Mr. Corley. We're going to go right to left, and then we will rotate who answers the question first in the order of the questions. So the first topic is financial responsibility and transparency. So Mr. Corley, approximately 60% of the city of Godley's revenue is generated from local property taxes. If elected, what ideas would you bring to the table regarding the proportionally spreading the growth out to not overly rely on the property tax owners?
The property tax owner, the property owner is, we're kind of locked in. When you look at the land, the house builders have taken over most of the land. And so if you want to change that tax base, you have to get commerce going. You got to bring in some type of commerce. And the question is, do we have the space for it? Do we have the place for it? And I would argue that, yeah, there is for certain types of commerce. We have to, the poor taxpayer comes to this town and on average is paying around $7,000 to $8,000 a year in property taxes. Now, the city of Godley does not take the lion's share of that, but it's still hard on the taxpayer. And so we have to look at the future. What is going to happen 5 years, 10 years from now that we might be able to take advantage of to bring in some sort of commerce just to kind of spread that tax base out? And it's going to be hard to do, but we can do that. And one way is to watch the money that comes in. We need to make our budgets. We need to review those budgets on a quarterly basis. And that needs to be open to everybody. We can't sit there and say, okay, we've got this budget at the end of the year, well, we did good, we did bad. We need to alert them ahead of time, this is what's going on. And during those budget reviews, we need to look at, can we change the process that we've implemented to have some cost savings involved? Am I talking too much?
You're getting about close.
Oh, thank you. But all of that goes to open transparency. The taxpayer needs to know what's going on. And what I will do is I will set up on a monthly basis a little show and tell. I'll come over here, out to the apartments, or go to my favorite spot over there, the donut shop. And just sit around for an hour and explain to people that show up
20 seconds.
what's going on. I'm pushing my time limit here, I talk about. But budgets, commerce, and open transparency. Open transparency, not just transparency for transparency's sake. Open and honest transparency. Let's get those check registers out there. Let's get our meetings out there. Let's get people involved in our community.
Would you like, if you need the question repeated?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So approximately 60% of the city of Godley's revenue is generated from local property taxes. If elected, what ideas would you bring to the table regarding spreading this responsibility out to not over-rely on the property tax owners?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as far as what I'd like to do is focus more on the tax equity. So, talk about create a plan that's around tax rate stabilization and making sure that we use that as natural property values go up, and then use that equity from taxpayers, right? And then use that. That's part one. Part two is something that I think that in our budget is very crucial, but it's overseen. I would like to start something called the Godley Grants Program. And this is something very low-hanging fruit. If you look at it over the last 10 years, so the last decade, from my research so far, again, they're probably oversight for 1,200 pages, I've seen 2 grants that are equivalent to about over 500,000. So what does that tell you? That we have a lot of room to grow towards public grants to, again, have that revenue come into our budget. So what I'd like to do is in the grants program, really hire somebody to really look at a grant writing program here in town to help focus on a lot of this unused grant money that's across the state of Texas. Again, if you look at it, there's been millions of dollars that were left untouched. If you look at the other larger counties around us, they are now starting to hire grant writers. When you start asking the question and deep diving it, you start seeing, because there's a lot of unused grants out there that go towards public safety, that go towards infrastructure, that goes towards, again, whatever the case may be for the cities. That is a very low hanging fruit opportunity that we have that is super realistic, that we can absolutely do so. And then the other piece too, again, just making sure that we have controlled growth with a lot of good balancing on zoning. So what does that mean? As long as we continue to find out what is agriculture zoning, what is multifamily zoning, what is single family home zoning, we need to find somebody who's had that experience before. As I mentioned before on the committee, I've looked at what zoning does historically at a larger county. You need somebody to come in, look at where our zoning is, and make sure that we have that in a controlled manner. I believe that we should be able to look at some A5 zoning, agriculture zoning, change to commercial in a very controlled way, and then have those
20 seconds, sir.
And have those folks that are coming for commerce, we need to start letting them know, hey, whatever again, big box retail store you want to name, right? We should be able to say, hey, this is what we want. We want you to control the roads, and we also want this tax benefit to help alleviate our taxpayer dollars here in the city of Godley. So again, just to recap again, look back at, again, the Godley Grants Program, and then look at very responsible growth as far as the zoning goes, is what I'd like to do as well.
I'm sorry. Oh, yes. So approximately 60% of the city of Godley's revenue is generated from local property taxes. If elected, what ideas would you bring to the table regarding spreading this responsibility out to not over-rely on property tax owners?
All right, I'm going to keep this short and sweet. At the end of the day, it all comes down to balancing your checkbook. So if you don't balance your checkbook, I mean, we have to be responsible. We can't take on a debt that we can't repay and rely on the taxpayers to pay it. So, as I said, I keep it short and sweet. It's all about balancing the checkbook.
It's going to go to you and then to her. So we're gonna time these to a minute. We have a lot of questions to get through, so we're going to time these to a minute. So appreciate the thorough answers, but we do have to manage the time. So, sir, the city of Godley has gone through a lot of changes over the last couple of years. Their transparency has improved significantly. Are there any improvements relating to transparency that you would work towards to continue this trend and improve upon what they have already done?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we need to revamp the Godley the website. Number one, I think we need to do a better job making sure that information gets pushed out forward. I love the idea of putting a signage out there. I think that I would support that 100%. We need something where folks notify that. I think the easiest, again, you need to find some sort of SMS or push system, right? If we have everybody's contact information, we should, we're the city of Godley, we should also have them opt in and say, hey, here's a text message, here's our agenda, here's what you want. Again, it's all about opting in. We should definitely use the already resources that we have with the website and have a push notification out to our citizens. If we have to go towards the paper route, we can.
20 seconds.
But I do think, again, a notification system that you mentioned out there on busy streets sounds like a great idea. For me, I would go back to more on the updating the website and creating more of a push notification system to opt in as well.
No, think that way. So once again, the city of Godley has gone through a lot of changes over the last couple of years. Their transparency has improved. Are there any improvements relating to transparency that you would work towards to continue this trend if elected to city council? 1 minute.
Okay, so let's think about what is the biggest option out there that is cost friendly. Social media. I know a lot of people don't like social media. I'm not a huge social media person, I'll put it out there, but I would be behind backing that and actually getting something out where we're not having to spend tons of money and actually have notifications and get people involved in the community on more of a social media level. If you look at statistics in this day and age, that's what's ruling everything. So, that's all I got.
Hear the question again, sir?
Sure, go ahead.
The city of Godley has gone through a lot of changes over the last couple of years. Their transparency has improved. If elected to city council, what would you bring to the table if elected to continue this trend?
I think all three of us would agree that getting the citizen involved is the first step. The second step is filling out the page that we have already. When I go onto the Godley page, the check registers are not there. A lot of the information it's just not there. And when we filled out that information as quickly as possible, that would go a long way to informing the people, the taxpayer, what's going on. I also like the idea of that sign. I like the idea of having a little chit chat on a Saturday morning. And what it boils down to, again, is getting the taxpayer involved. You can put it on Facebook, you do whatever you want. If they're tired and they don't want to go to it, then you're wasting your time.
15 seconds.
15 seconds. But if you get them involved, if you send them emails, if you get notices out to them the best way you can, and get them excited about the city, then I think you go a long way to do what you want to do.
Do we have any questions from the audience regarding only financial responsibility and transparency? Okay, we'll move on. Ma'am, if you're going to be the first one to answer the next question. So this is on communication and community involvement. If elected, what action would you take to overcome any realized or perceived communication issues between the city elected officials, city staff, and the greater Godley community? This is a segue somewhat on the last one. If elected, what action would you take to overcome any realized or perceived communication issues between the elected officials and the city and the greater Godley community?
My take on we've got to move forward. Dwelling on the past, any kind of communication, we've really got to work on moving forward. I think Godley is in a better place than it was, but we all got to communicate, we all need to come together, we all need to have common ground.
If elected, what action would you take to overcome any realized or perceived communication issues between the elected officials, the city staff, and the greater Godley community?
I think number one, old school town hall meetings work, right? I think we have the Godley High School and gym can probably fit quite a bit, right? Let's use that. First and foremost, open transparency, open communication. Town halls are the way to go. Again, always civilized, right? That's that way. The other thing too that I would also add as an elected official, if that happens, is also start including like office hours, right? Let everybody know, hey, we've got office hours. What questions do you have? And then the last thing too that I have here written down would be more of the community surveys and polls. I don't think, again, I could be wrong. I'm gonna have to go back and check my notes on it. I don't know how often the city of Godley, as I mentioned, a push notification or some sort of survey, whatever type of communication that is. I don't know how often we're doing that to get the pulse of the citizens in Godley. So that's something that I would strive for there as well. But again, it goes back to town hall meetings.
15 seconds.
Again, just doing that route, office hours, and again, go back to updating our push notification systems for our citizens.
If elected, what action would you take to overcome any realized or perceived communication issues between the elected city officials and the city staff with the greater Godley community?
Well, again, I would get that the homepage set up, get all the information out there. Recently, a new inspection letter was sent to local businesses here, and some of the people came and talked to me about it. And I'm not aware of the city sending out a pre-letter informing people that, hey, there's a new thing coming down the pipe. It could have been, I don't know. Just people I talked to didn't mention that. And so, if we're going to do anything from the city council for the city, we should advertise it before we implement it. Get people aware of what's going on around them. I think that'll come a long way to help them with the communication side.
We're going to right now. We'll come back to you. Second question under communication and community involvement. Community events and functions are paramount to a community's identity. They foster healthy relationships, they integrate and facilitate relationships among neighbors, and overall they improve the quality of living of any community. If elected, what type of community events would you propose and support?
Well, we currently have a few going on. I think one thing that would help would be a neighborhood childhood parade. Get these neighborhoods inside their neighborhood parades, and let's just offer some kind of a city of Godley award for the best parade or whatever it is, the best float, whatever costume. That would get the families involved in their neighborhood. Then we can take that step one up and have a city parade. And it doesn't have to be tied to anything other than the city of Godley. That way you avoid all kinds of issues. But that's one way. We're doing a good job, I think, of using the park.
15 seconds.
That we have. So just you have to turn around and look at what do we have available to push for the taxpayer to come and talk and see.
Sir, community events and functions are paramount to a community's identity. They foster healthy relationships. They integrate and facilitate relationships among neighbors. And overall, they improve the quality living of any community. If elected, what type of community events would you propose and support?
Yeah, I think more importantly, take the example of like the Godley 3v3 basketball, right? That's how I met a lot of folks. It sounds very cliche, but we need to start implementing and use their already resources. Use the churches that we have, Stone and Water Church. See if there's any other events that we can do. But more importantly, we need to start looking more into, I like the idea of the parades, kind of sort of, but what we need to do is start having folks more, your trunk or treats, right? Your Easter egg hunts, whatever the case may be when it comes to the community. Again, we have to just integrate. I always love integrating the schools. I think that's the best way to go about it, right? I think some mentorship programs, I think the schools already have some reading programs. How can we start fostering those relationships to the next level? But I just go back to ensuring that we use, again, a trunk or treat, we got a Halloween, again, we've got Easter. I think you've also got more of the holiday parades as well, like the Christmas parades. Look at bringing that back as well. So some things there. Again, if you guys have any more ideas, please reach out to me as well. I'd love to hear more ideas.
Ma'am, community events and functions are paramount to a community's identity. They foster healthy relationships, integrate and facilitate relationships among neighbors, and overall they improve the quality of living in the community. If elected, what type of community events, if any, would you propose and support?
So, what happened to a good old block party that we used to have in our neighborhood? Except bring it to downtown Godley and have a block party with all the local businesses involved, and also still preserve the history of Godley. I just think, I'm sorry, Mom. I mean, if you think about it, like growing up when you were younger, if you went to a block party, you were always excited. I know I was always excited. So what's a better way to get the community together than block all this area off, have a big party, and involve all of our local businesses as well.
Any questions from the audience with communication or community involvement? All right, sir, you ready? All right. So now the next topic is managing growth and property taxes. So first question, Godley currently has 0 bond debt. This is rare and shows the past and current elected officials have focused on financial responsibility and respect to the taxpayers. However, there is a real possibility at some point bonds may need to be considered. How would you navigate the process or consideration of a future bond or debt obligation that you will be potentially asking citizens to sign on to?
Great question. Great question. So I think first and foremost, it's open transparency, right? That's number one rule. If there is some sort of bond package that has to happen, please know you have my word. It would be transparent as to down to the pennies of what's being spent. That's number one. Number two, it's very crucial to understand that whatever we are using that bond for has to be a revenue generating that actually makes sense. But more importantly, if it's a big decision for a bond, it's going to have to go to a vote. Let me just be very crystal clear, right? Like, we can propose it, but we 100%, I would say we as council, but I would also make sure it gets put to a vote. It would have town hall meetings, office hours, you name it. Transparency is key, but more importantly, you have to make sure that it is a revenue generating bond that we have future looking for, whatever it is. And is there anything else on that question?
There's other ways to assess debt if you want to address that.
Yeah, and then I think we're kind of short of that.
Yeah. Currently, Godley, the city, has 0 bond debt. This is rare and shows that the past and current elected officials have focused on financial responsibility and respect for the taxpayers. However, there's a real possibility that at some point, bonds or other debt may need to be considered. How would you navigate the process and consideration of a bond or other types of debt asking the taxpayers to pay for?
I agree with him as far as it comes with communication. I think talking to your constituents and asking them their thoughts on it. At the end of the day, I'm here for the community. I'm not here for myself personally. So I think when it comes to it, it really would come and go off of what our community thinks and what's going to be best for our community. And as he said, if it's going to be revenue generating.
All right. Mr. Corley, Godley currently has 0 bond debt. This is rare and shows the past and current elected officials have focused on financial responsibility and respect for the taxpayers. However, there is a real possibility at some point bonds or other types of debt may need to be considered. How would you navigate the process of considering the taxpayers to support a bond or other debt obligation?
What I've seen, the bond itself must be well defined. It must be line item. I don't like seeing a bond, we need new school buses, or we need a new street. Tell me the street. How many streets? What's it gonna cost? Put all of that out to the taxpayer. You're asking the taxpayer to accept a loan that they're gonna have to pay back. They have to pay back the interest. You don't get to them and say, well, we need a new building. Well, what kind of building? What's it for? And what is the cost? Outline the cost. Recent bonds have come out with a huge amount of money, but they didn't define exactly what they're going to do with it. Is it a money grab? Are they trying to float a bond out there with extra cash in it that they can do whatever they want? You got to tell the taxpayer exactly what is that bond, what is it for, and explain to them that there's an interest attached to that bond. And they're going to have to pay that back. Don't try to tell them, oh, this bond is not, there's no interest on this bond. It's free money. That's not true. And the taxpayer is not stupid.
Time.
That's it?
Yeah. So, ma'am, are you next? Or who? Yeah, it's your turn. Okay. The current city council has chosen to extend extra tax relief to the citizens of Godley in numerous ways. The current city council has extended an additional 10% general homestead exemption, an additional $10,000 for over 65, an additional $10,000 for disabled person. They adopted the no new revenue tax rate, and they have the lowest tax rate currently in Johnson County for cities. The next lowest is 7 cents higher. They also carry no debt. If elected, what approach regarding property taxes would you take, and where do you rate the current property taxes exemptions that Godley has approved, and how do you manage that in a community that is definitely going to grow?
Repeat that last part again.
The question part?
Yes, please.
If elected, what approach regarding property taxes would you take, and where do you rate the current property taxes and exemptions the city has approved, and how would you manage that with a growing community?
Okay. Sorry. So you're talking about basically managing our property taxes and what we would do to not make them more?
So
Is that what I'm getting?
Godley has by far the most responsible in Johnson County city taxes, and it's not close.
Okay.
And they're growing. So how would you manage and navigate potentially having to break potentially bad news to residents, or keep it where it is and potentially there's a straddling the fence? This is like a keep up with the Joneses question.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Well, I think it would come down to what is best for our city. I mean, if we're getting to a spot where we have to raise the taxes 7 cents, do we want to grow, or do we want to stay, or do we want to progress? I think it's going to come down to really and truly what the community thinks. But at the end of the day, I think it's also going to come down to what's best to move us forward. I don't think without coming wrong, but I don't foresee it as being a terrible thing. And I'll just be honest, me as a person. If you wanted to raise my taxes 7 cents, I don't think that I would be upset in the sense of helping us grow to a better place. Yeah, that's basically all I got.
So, sir, currently the city council has extended extra tax relief to the citizens of Godley in numerous ways. Some of those are a 10% additional homestead exemption, an additional $10,000 for senior citizens over 65, additional $10,000 for disabled persons. They adopted a no new revenue tax rate, and they currently have the lowest tax rate in Johnson County for cities. And that's 7 cents lower than the number 2 city, which is Cleburne. If elected, what approach regarding property taxes would you take, and where do you rate the current property taxes and exemptions that the city of Godley has approved?
So I like them where they're at, right? So I'm a small business owner, so I like the taxes where they're at. But let me be very crystal clear. When it comes to having a tax relief per se, right? It all goes back down to controlled growth and proper zoning, as I mentioned earlier. How do we bring in more commercial folks into Godley? How can we attract them, right? By making sure we have the proper zoning aligned to have these commercial conglomerates come in to help that alleviate that tax pressure. Again, will it happen? I don't know. But just remember, everything's always up to a vote. Again, back to transparency. But just to go back to it again, it all goes back down to how can we attract the best developers here that are going to help us in the commercial sense, bring in revenue generating, tax revenue generating for the city, so we can keep our taxes down to where it's almost a no deficit budget. That's always going to be my approach. Again, fiscally responsible. So that's my approach there.
Okay.
The current city council and the mayor and the city service people have done a most excellent job in the last 2 or 3 years getting us into the financial, beautiful house that we're in. And they ought to be applauded. You ought to stand up and just thank them. They probably won't walk on water, but they can sure crawl on it. They've just done an excellent job. But now we're talking about in the future. Stop that right now. You can't talk about a bond without addressing cost. You have to control your cost to control your need for bonds.
15 seconds.
And that's it.
No, 15.
Okay. And so, if I'm talking about a bond, how do I explain to the citizens that we're going to have to borrow some money because we didn't balance our budget, because we overspent? You got to control your expenses. Then you can go to the city citizens and say, look, this is why we need a bond. And he's shaking his head. I agree.
Any questions from the audience regarding managing growth and property taxes?
Okay, so my question is, several businesses have received tax abatements. And so you talk about bringing in commercial to help offset the tax burden on the property owners. But if you offer these businesses these tax abatements, then the city is missing out on revenue, tax revenue from these businesses. Would you support continuing these tax abatements, or do you think that companies want to come here to Godley and they'd be happy to pay their share of the taxes?
I think we're in a situation where we're not very close to having to worry about that. We need more citizens. If commercial properties and industries come here, we get sales tax if they're furniture stores, clothing stores, whatever, movie houses. So there is some tax revenue off of that. Plus, then you have jobs. People are making money. People make money. They like to spend money. At least I do. And so more sales tax income. And so the abatement, are we going to have to offer a $5 million abatement? Somebody's going to put in a car manufacturing plant in Godley? That's not going to happen, I don't think.
15 seconds.
Your turn.
We got 15 seconds.
Essentially, it's going to come down to a cost-benefit analysis. I mean, you need to understand if the abatements are worth, if it is it worth it. That's essentially what it comes down to. For me, if it's something where I would actually love to chat with you offline as well about this as well, just so I can really understand the numbers exactly. But for me, it's just come down to the cost-benefit analysis. We need to let the data do the talking, and we need to also understand how developers are thinking, but we also need to understand how commercial folks are also thinking, like yourself or anybody else here as well. Again, go back to transparency. town halls, making sure, hey, what problems do you have? Let's air them out. I'm an old school guy, I write everything on a whiteboard. Hey, let's figure this out. But cost-benefit analysis, let the data do the talking, 100%. And then obviously let the citizens decide after that. To your question.
I will keep it short and sweet again. Yes, I will be on board with them.
So, one more, sorry.
If we're going to expand, if we're going to expand on building, are you going to be checking for bids, making sure that we get the best builders, and to make sure that we're not in the position that we were in with the schools?
Yeah, so. You directly? Okay.
All three will answer the
question. Sure. One, fantastic. So I think the biggest thing is we have to start really vetting these developers, the ones that meet the Godley standard, right? It has to be the ones where all of our citizens feel very comfortable with, and more importantly, we're not going to get, negative folks with negative reviews. We have to make sure we have a very strong vetting process to ensure that we learn from our past mistakes and ensure that the developers and whoever comes in here meets what I call the Godley standard, essentially. And if that means me and you having a conversation directly with some commercial folks or developers, that's what's going to have to happen. I want them to have open meetings just like this. I want them to tell us every detail. I want to know where every penny's going. I want to know how they're going to help the roads, where the tax dollars are going. I want to know everything. So, but it has to meet what I call the Godley standard, right? So that's, we want to learn from our mistakes in the past to make sure that you feel confident in the decisions that we make as a council, and more importantly, the way we represent everybody as well.
Okay, so yes, when it comes to bids, I 100% think you need to have multiple options. I don't think that one person should be the absolute, we're only going with you. It's kind of like if you're going to go shop for a house. You're not going to be like, this one house, that's it, move on. I think that as far as when it comes to having bids, I think all of that needs to be open communication in the community, and every single detail needs to be let known to the community. But I will never be like, one, that's it, we're done. Let's move on. So I would do my due diligence.
I think all three of us agree that bids, you gotta have at least three. You go send it on an RFP, okay, fine, give me three. And let's all look at it. And don't do like the ISD does. Let's just spread that out. Let's look at it, let's study it, and then let's let the taxpayer know what's going on, let them know our analysis, and ask them what do they think. It's their money, it's not ours. And we gotta build up the taxpayer back to the top level of government, where the taxpayer belongs.
I'm sorry? You're getting better, Don. No, just kidding. So now we're on to managing roads and infrastructure. So the first question for Don. On the May ballot, Proposition A is asking for the reauthorization of local sales and use tax in the city of Godley at the rate of 0.0125 to continue providing revenue for the maintenance and repair of municipal streets. What is your understanding and your thoughts on earmarking sales tax for specific purposes, specifically maintenance and repair of the municipal streets?
I have no problem with that. Not at all. Our streets in Godley need fixing. They just do. There's no getting around that. How are we going to get the money? Well, we get it off the sales tax. That can help. But there's, when we look at what's going on, the second part of that question, JSUD, our water people, what do they charge for a tap on a commercial business? I think it's about $250,000 to put in a flood. It's a lot of money. It's a ton of money. So, we gotta work with other cities on some of this stuff. Maybe there's a section of
Wonder Twin Powers.
Activate. There he goes. a section of road that meets with Joshua, maybe Joshua and Godley could get together and go for one bond or one contract to fix that road and split the cost so that nobody really is going to pay the whole price. I don't know. But you got to look around you and see where you can get additional funds. You don't want to sit there and, okay, well, we got sales tax for this one.
Let's wrap it up, Doug.
Next.
All right.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to do the question again. So on the May ballot, Proposition A is asking for the reauthorization of local sales and use tax in the city of Godley at the rate of 0.0125 to continue to provide revenue for the maintenance and repair of municipal streets. What is your understanding and your thoughts on earmarking sales tax for specific purposes, in this case, specifically the maintenance and repair of our municipal streets?
Yeah, for sure. I think, again, it's needed. Echo kind of what Don mentioned. But more importantly, I think we need to also understand currently, looking through our budget, we currently have $400,000 in a capital improvements. So we do have some funds, but we need to still have more. So I think not only do we need to have for our local streets, but this also needs to go into more of a, what I call a traffic study as well. So we need to have all that. Again, if somebody please correct me, when was the last time there was a published traffic study in the city of Godley? Anybody? I don't think there has. So we need to start. I would love to have some of those revenues, some of the dollars there to do a traffic study and then use the data to start figuring out what we need to do next. But yes, as far as using the dollars for maintenance, we have to do it. I think the ongoing joke when I first moved here is, sorry, Mr. Officer, I'm swerving because I'm trying to dodge the potholes, right? I think that's the joke that I got when I first moved here, and we see it here. So again, infrastructure being very proactive with this, but again, very analytical to make sure we let the data do the talking on where we need to go next with those tax dollars.
On the May ballot, Proposition A is asking for the reauthorization of local sales and use tax in the city of Godley at the rate of 0.0125 to continue providing revenue for the maintenance and repair of municipal streets. What is your understanding and thoughts on earmarking sales tax for specific purposes, specifically maintenance and repair of municipal streets?
Okay, so I'll be 100% transparent. I am all for it. If you look at my Instagram handle for running for city council, it is pothole party _ because we have a lot of potholes. I would definitely be all for it though, but to kind of twist this into a little bit of a different situation, some of my questions would be, what are we doing as far as all of the developers out here? And what are they helping with? And what are they transforming to help with the roads? They're coming in, building all this stuff, tearing up the roads. What benefit are we getting out of them for letting them come in and do all of this? So, but I'm 100% for it.
All right, last question for the moderator before we do the last questions for the audience. So we spoke about roads as managing roads and infrastructure. So what is your current assessment on the condition of the city of Godley general infrastructure, and what are your infrastructure priorities, and what options would you consider in funding infrastructure improvement upgrades if needed? Who started first last time? There you go. Okay, let me start you over since you're thank you. Go.
All right, there you go. Whatever happens in God, whatever road we take, wherever we go, I would hate to see this road, this street change. So any infrastructure that we have, whatever we build, let's leave this road alone. This road is godly. It's only a block long, but it's home. It is home. And whatever we build, whatever avenue we try to go down, let's do it together. Let's talk to each other. Let's cry with each other. Let's argue with each other. Let's talk. And build us a city that thrives.
15 seconds.
There he goes. It's a city that thrives, a city that can take care of its citizens as a city should do. We don't work for the city. The city should be working for us. So let's just sit back and see exactly where do we want to go. Let's have that conversation. What do we want to look like 10 years from now?
So we spoke about roads. What is your current assessment of the condition of the city of Godley overall infrastructure? What are your infrastructure priorities, and what options would you consider in funding infrastructure improvements and upgrades if needed?
For sure. I'm going to go back to my joke, right? Sorry, Mr. Officer, I was swerving into the potholes. Like that's one thing. But I think it goes back down to, I know I talked about the traffic study, but more importantly, we need to start looking into a geographic informational systems, into the GIS. Really have those tell us where we need to go in priorities. So again, let the data do the talking. Right here, underlined, I have 171 working with TxDOT. Again, TxDOT, we have to work with them for 171 and possibly get the county involved. Then you also have 2331 and then 917. Those are my biggest priorities here that I would do. But more importantly, again, my priority for me would be working with the county, working with the TxDOT for 171 for possible expansion. We cannot handle anything, again, as we start growing, you're already going to start to see that. But those are my priorities would be right there, would be 171 with TxDOT, the county, 31, and then 917. But again, we have to let the data do the talking and identify where's the point or where's the bottleneck, essentially, in Godley. So that's the way, again, always super transparent. I will always show the data results, whatever the case may be. But yeah, let me know whatever other ideas may happen. That's the way I would go about it.
Great. Yep. So we spoke about roads. What is your current assessment of the condition of the city of Godley infrastructure? What are your infrastructure priorities, and what options would you consider in funding infrastructure improvements and or upgrades if needed?
Okay, so as far as the infrastructure, from what I've looked into, I think that the city is growing faster than what our infrastructure is at. Obviously, you want to keep up with it, but at the end of the day, as I said before, short and sweet, it's all about balancing your checkbook. If it makes sense, great. If it doesn't, then we need to look for another option.
So any questions from the audience on roads and infrastructure?
Okay, so something I haven't really heard the city talk about is possibly looking into a moratorium. A moratorium allows the city to pause growth for development to allow the infrastructure to catch up. What we've experienced the last couple of years in Godley is a lot of rooftops going up, and the city hasn't been able to keep up with this, with the sewer, with the water, with the infrastructure and the roads. Would you consider looking into a moratorium to pause development so the city can catch up with the infrastructure and not put more burden on the taxpayers to build that infrastructure before we're ready for these rooftops to come in?
Well, yes. Just flat, yes. I'd go into it, but yes, I'll help you offline.
Yeah, I am a yes also, 100%.
I'm a maybe.
Oh, let me start the timer, Don.
I'm a maybe on that. Moratorium would mean if nobody's moving in, no additional tax rates. I'd have to really look at that and consider it before I would agree to that. But it does sound like a very good idea.
Any other questions on roads? There we go. On roads or infrastructure?
Just to speak to that real quick, moratoriums are emergent only and they're only good for 90 days if granted, so that would be very difficult to do. But my other question is on Proposition A, if a citizen was asking you if voting no for it meant a reduction in their taxes, what would you tell them?
Here's what?
If you were talking to a citizen about Proposition A and whether or not they should vote for it, and they told you they were planning on saying no to it, how would you explain to them the impact on your taxes?
Do you want me to read Prop A again? Okay. You okay with that? Okay.
No, I can't read it now.
Well, why not? He makes me be quiet all the time.
So, do you guys want me to pull up the actual specific verbiage on the ballot, or is Cliff Notes enough?
Just good.
Okay. Proposition A is asking for the reauthorization of local sales and use tax in the city of Godley at the rate of 0.0125 to continue to provide revenue for the maintenance and repair of municipal streets. Is that condensed enough for, to meet your intent of your question? Okay.
And you want to know if I was talking to a taxpayer and the taxpayer was not going to vote for it?
Mm-hmm. How would you explain the impact?
I would try to explain to the taxpayer that it's little impact on his personal billfold right now. But in the future, what could happen is your property taxes are going to go up. The money's got to come from somewhere. And I'd rather be paying, 1.04, whatever it is, for an apple, than have the county come out and tell me, okay, well, your tax rate's going up about $5,000. And I would make that comparison. I mean, they got to know it's a small amount immediately versus the large amount later. And that's the way I would explain it to them.
I'm going to read
I think it's echo similar to what Don just mentioned. I think it's very similar. Just explain the breakdown, right? Again, pull out your tax sheet. Hey, this is the exact percentage impact. This is exactly what it looks like. And then just explain the now versus later. But again, specifically in that verbiage, Greg, you mentioned it was specifically for the maintenance, right? And what was the other verbiage?
Continue the revenue for the maintenance and repair, and it's reauthorizing something already that's there.
For sure. So make sure we specify the verbiage, right? And specify exactly, hey, this is why it's super important to look at it now and why it's super important moving forward.
Okay.
We're going to read? Are you good?
No, I'm good. That's not a problem. Okay, so as far as a 0.125 tax, I think that if you look at it now, think about if you wait longer, that could go up to 5, 10, 15. So what is 0.125 versus down the road? So I agree with them.
There you go. All right. So we're going to have 2 minutes of closing statements. And then we're going to take a few minute break before we start with city council. So, our school board, sorry, excuse me, school board. So, Mr. Corley, do you want to go first again? Oh, there we go. So, up to 2 minutes for your closing statements on why people should come out and vote for you, ma'am. And remind them, please, what place you're running for.
Okay, so Deidre Self, City Council, place 3. When it comes down to it, it's all about checkbooks for me. So, and also Spring Fest is April 12th. I would love to see everybody come out and engage. That's all I got.
Don Corley, place 1 for the city council. For me, it's the taxpayer. Bringing the taxpayer in, explain to the taxpayer, set up that transparency and set up that communication. I think our future would be a lot brighter.
Again, my name is Mike Mentos, running for place 1. I think a couple things that, again, we need to talk about is, looks like there are some tax burdens that we need to consider, and more importantly, with full transparency, right? I mentioned about fiscal responsibility, open transparency, and more importantly, public safety and infrastructure growth, doing it in a controlled manner, right? As we continue to grow the city of Godley, you're going to need somebody very specific to look at every dollar, every cent, and more importantly, explain that to our citizens as well, and keep them informed along the whole process. That is what I bring to the table here specifically. I have the experience looking at budgets. I'm a small business owner. Again, I look at every dollars and cents every single day. I live within the community here. So this is one of these things that I want to make sure that the only answer here is Michael Matos Place 1. If y'all have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you again. I want to thank you, Greg, as well here for hosting us here as well. So I appreciate you.
Thank Chisholm. Thank Chisholm. So we're going to take about a 5-minute break before we do school board. Please thank these individuals. This is hard to do, and they're choosing to volunteer their time, and they're choosing to consider serving their city. So let's give them a round of applause. And Chisholm too.
Step on this side of the table, or is that? Step on that side of the table, or
Oh yeah, no, we're not.
oh, never mind. I'm gonna go. I need to talk to them.
There you go. They can think. Good job.
What do you think?
What's the earliest we can do? Yeah, we can be like